My fiancée demanded I pay for her mom's surgery, then cheated with her ex. So I took the ring back and sued them both for fraud. I've always been the kind of guy who believes loyalty is love's highest form. Maybe it's because I was raised to keep my word, or maybe it's because I'd seen too many people treat relationships like temporary shelters. Either way, when I met Hannah, I thought I'd finally found someone who valued loyalty the same way I did. She wasn't flashy or loud. She was warm charming in that quiet, grounded way that makes you feel seen. We met at a friend's dinner party, and within minutes, we were trading stories about childhood dreams, bad coffee, and why modern dating felt like walking through a minefield. She laughed at my sarcasm, and I loved the way her eyes softened when she talked about her mom. Linda Hannah told me her mom raised her alone after her dad walked out when she was 6. She called her mom her hero, said she wanted to make her proud. I respected that. It reminded me of the way I felt about my late father, like love should always come with responsibility. That sense of shared values made me fall for her faster than I should have. Within months, we were inseparable. We had matching morning routines, shared playlists, and even started talking about buying a place together. Everything about her felt real genuine. I thought, finally, someone who gets it. But then, small moments started standing out. Like the time she mentioned how hard her mom had it, and how some men wouldn't understand the sacrifices women make for family. Or at the time she looked at me and said, "If you really love someone, you love their family too." At the time, I took it as sincerity. I thought she was testing whether I could be trusted with her heart. I didn't realize she was testing how far she could stretch my loyalty before it broke, and soon enough, she'd find out. It started subtly, so quietly, that if you'd asked me back then, I would have said everything was fine. Hannah had this way of weaving concern and guilt into the same sentence. It always sounded like love, but it felt like pressure. She began talking about her mom's health more often. Casual at first, "Mom's been tired lately," or "the doctors are keeping an eye on her heart." I'd nod, offer sympathy, and she'd sigh like it was her burden to carry alone. Then one night over dinner, she said softly, "If anything ever happened to her, I don't know what I'd do." I reached across the table, took her hand, and told her, "You won't go through that alone." She smiled, but her eyes were calculating like she'd just confirmed something. A few weeks later, her tone shifted. "Mom's refusing to go to the hospital. She says it's too expensive." I said gently, "You know, I'll help when we're married. We'll handle things together." Her fork clattered against the plate. "So my mom has to wait until you decide I'm worth marrying?" she asked, voice shaking. The words hit me like a slap. I stumbled over my reply, trying to explain what I meant, but the damage was done. She left that night in tears, and I sat there replaying the conversation until dawn, wondering how I'd messed up so badly when all I'd tried to do was be reasonable. The next morning she texted, "I'm sorry. I just love her so much. It scares me. Of course, I forgave her. I always did." When you love someone, you want to ease their pain. What I didn't realize was sometimes the pain isn't real. Sometimes it's a test, and I had just failed mine without even knowing it. A month later, Hannah called me in tears. They're saying Mom needs surgery something with her heart valves. The doctor said it can't wait. Her voice trembled, and before I could ask questions, she added, "But she doesn't have the insurance for it." I don't know what to do. I didn't think twice. I dropped everything, drove to her place, and found her curled up on the couch, surrounded by tissues and open bills. She showed me hospital forms, medical estimates, all stamped with some clinic logo I'd never heard of. "I can't let her die. I can't," she whispered, shaking. I held her, promising we'd figure it out together. I told her I'd cover the deposit, and she started sobbing, grateful, overwhelmed, clinging to me like I'd saved her world. "You're my everything," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." That line should have been sweet. Instead, it stuck in my chest like a hook the next morning. I transferred a huge portion of my savings money I'd been putting aside for our wedding and first homestead into her account. I even double-checked with her, asking, "You're sure this covers it?" She nodded quickly, kissed me, and said, "You have no idea what this means." After that, things were quiet. Too quiet. Too quiet. No updates from the hospital. No photos. No messages about recovery. Every time I asked, Hannah said, "They're keeping her overnight," or "She's resting," They don't want visitors. Still, I ignored the pit in my stomach. I told myself she was just overwhelmed, that not everyone handles crisis the same way. A week later, she showed up with flowers and a tired smile, saying, "Mom's out of surgery. She's okay." I believed her. Of course I did, because when you love someone, doubt feels like betrayal, and I wasn't ready to believe that I was the one being betrayed. For a while after the surgery, life went back to normal at least. That's what I told myself. Hannah acted grateful, but different. The warmth that once filled our days had thinned into something distant, fragile. She'd smile at me, but it never reached her eyes. I tried to be understanding. Trauma changes people, right? She'd say things like, "I just need time," or "I've been thinking a lot lately," and I'd nod, telling her to take all the space she needed. But space turned into silence. Nights she used to spend curled against me became hours, scrolling through her phone, screen lighting up with messages she'd quickly hide. Once, I caught her laughing at a text. "Who's that?" I asked. She froze. "Just an old friend checking in." Her tone was flat, defensive. "An old friend?" I asked carefully. "Oh my God, not this again. Do you seriously think I'd cheat on you after everything we've been through?" Her words hit hard, sharp, and calculated. I backed down, apologized, and she hugged me tight, whispering, "I just need you to trust me." So I did. I wanted to believe that love could fix anything, that her distance was just stress, not disinterest. But then little inconsistencies began piling up. She mentioned her mom's recovery, but couldn't remember which hospital the surgery had been in. She claimed she'd been staying with her mom at night, but a mutual friend mentioned spotting her downtown with someone I didn't recognize. The doubt I'd been burying finally started to surface. Still, I convinced myself it was all harmless coincidence, because if I stopped believing her now, it would mean facing a truth I wasn't ready for. That the woman I loved might be lying to me, and deep down, I already knew she was. It happened one night when she left her phone on the kitchen counter while showering. Normally, I'd never touch it, but curiosity doesn't always ask for permission. A message flashed across the screen, and my stomach turned at the name, Ethan. Her ex, the same guy she'd once described as toxic, controlling, and the reason she didn't trust men. The message read, "I miss you too. We'll figure this out once I handle him." Handle him? My hands went cold, my pulse hammered in my ears as I scrolled up, seeing weeks of messages, all hidden under a contact saved as work. There were photos, heart emojis, and voice notes, her whispering things I'd never heard her say to me when she stepped out of the shower. Towel wrapped around her hair, I couldn't hold it in. Hannah, who's Ethan, her eyes flickered fear, guilt, calculational in a split second. "You went through my phone," she shot back, her voice trembling with anger, not shame. I held up the screen. "You told me he was gone. You lied." She crossed her arms, tears forming. "Do you even hear yourself? You invaded my privacy. You don't trust me. I'm looking at proof, Hannah." But she wouldn't stop crying, wouldn't stop talking about how I'd violated her boundaries, how I never believed in her healing. By the time she was done, I was the villain, and somehow I found myself apologizing. She stormed out that night, phone in hand, saying she needed space. I sat in the dark, surrounded by silence and the echo of my own stupidity. A few hours later, her mom called me, voice dripping with venom. "You made my daughter cry. After everything she's been through, you should be ashamed." That was the moment I realized it wasn't just Hannah manipulating me. It was both of them, and if I didn't wake up soon, I was going to lose a lot more than love. A week later, she came back, eyes red, voice soft, playing the part of a woman who'd been broken by misunderstanding. She said she just needed time to think. "I didn't cheat," she swore. "Ethan reached out when Mom was sick." I shouldn't have replied. It was a mistake. I wanted to believe her. Against every logical thought screaming in my head, I wanted to believe that she was just confused. So, when she said, "Let's start over," I agreed. She kissed me and whispered, "You're my home, not him." From that day, she went into overdrive, affectionate, attentive, the perfect fiancée. She'd make dinner, plan date nights, and talk nonstop about our wedding. I thought maybe we'd healed, but soon, her energy shifted again from love to obsession with money. "Babe," she said one night, while flipping through bridal magazines, "I found the perfect venue. It's expensive, but it's once in a lifetime." I hesitated. Didn't we just pay for your mom's surgery? Maybe we should wait. Her tone changed instantly. So you're saying I don't deserve a dream wedding? Every conversation turned into a trap. If I said no, I didn't love her enough. If I said yes, she found something bigger to want. Designer dresses, custom invitations, a destination bachelorette trip with her friends. Each time I questioned it, she'd tear up. You can't put a price on happiness. I was drowning financially, emotionally, mentally. But then something shifted in me. Quietly, I started saving screenshots, bank statements, and texts. Every transfer I made, every receipt she sent, I documented it all. I didn't even know why at first, just a gut instinct that whispered, protect yourself. She had no idea that while she was preparing to play bride, I was preparing for something else entirely, because deep down, I knew our wedding wasn't going to happen. At least, not the way she planned. It was 5 days before the wedding. I was finalizing payments with vendors, exhausted but determined to hold it all together. When my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, it read, "You deserve to know the truth." Attached was a video file. My first instinct was to ignore it. Probably spam, I thought. But curiosity gnawed at me. When I pressed play, my heart stopped. The video showed Hannah in a dimly lit hallway outside a hotel room, laughing her hands around a man's neck. Then came the kiss. Long, familiar, and passionate. The timestamp in the corner said it all. It was from last week, her bachelorette trip. I didn't feel rage at first, just emptiness. That heavy, hollow kind of silence that makes your breathing sound loud. I sat there watching the loop, trying to find a reasonable explanation that didn't end with betrayal. When she came home that night, humming like nothing had happened, I just asked, "How was the trip?" She smiled. "Perfect. Just what I needed." I nodded, pulled out my phone, and played the video. Her smile froze. Her color drained. "I can explain," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You can't." She dropped the act. Instantly, no tears, no apologies, just irritation. "You weren't supposed to see that," she muttered, like she was angry at me for catching her for a moment. I just stared at her, this stranger in my house who had once made me believe in forever. Then I said, the only thing I could manage, "Get out." She left without a word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame, and as the echo faded, so did whatever love I had left for her. But what I didn't know yet was that my heartbreak wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much colder. The next morning, I woke up numb. The wedding venue, the guests, the deposits, all meaningless now. What haunted me wasn't losing Hannah. It was realizing how icily she'd used me. Every "I love you," every tear, every story about her mother, all rehearsed. By noon, I'd made my decision. I called her and said, "We're done. I want the ring back." She didn't even hesitate before spitting. "You gave it to me? It's mine." Her tone was smug, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this argument. "It was a symbol," I said, keeping my voice calm. "You broke that promise. Then sue me," she snapped and hung up. So I did. I went through my bank records, digging into every payment, the surgery deposit, the wedding expenses, everything. Something didn't add up. When I cross-checked the hospital invoice number she'd sent me, it didn't exist. The clinic didn't even have a license. That's when I called my friend Marcus, a lawyer who owed me a favor. I forwarded the documents, the texts, and even screenshots of her messages with Ethan. 2 days later, he called back, his tone sharp. "You've got a case, man?" This wasn't just a lie. This was fraud. The truth hit like lightning. Hannah, her mom, and Ethan had all been in on it. A setup that began the moment I became the loyal one. The surgery was a scam. The bills were fabricated, and I'd funded their fantasy life without knowing it. For the first time in months, the numbness lifted. In its place came clarity, cold, steady, and deliberate. Now it was my turn to play back, only this time by the rules of the law. Filing the lawsuit felt like crossing a line. I could never come back from but. It was the only way to take my life back. Marcus helped me draft everything: fraud, emotional damages, and recovery of the stolen funds. We attached proof bank transfers, fake invoices, screenshots of her messages with Ethan, and the non-existent hospital's registration number. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice. When the papers were served, Hannah's reaction was instant. She showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, mascara streaked, screaming, "How could you do this to me?" I opened it just enough to say, "You did this to yourself." She broke into sobs, switching gears, mid-sentence, pleading, accusing, bargaining. "Please, don't ruin my life." I was desperate. "You're cruel. You're heartless." I didn't flinch. I'd seen that act before. A week later, the story spread through our social circle. Everyone had an opinion. Some believed her version that I was a scorned ex trying to destroy her. Others reached out quietly, saying, "We always knew something was off about her. It didn't matter." I wasn't fighting for sympathy. I was fighting for the truth. During the first hearing, she tried to play the victim, crying about financial stress and emotional trauma. But Marcus was ruthless. He pulled up receipts showing her and Ethan withdrawing my money the same day it was transferred. He even traced the fake hospital invoice to an account under Ethan's name. The courtroom went silent. Linda tried to speak on her daughter's behalf, but one of her signatures appeared on the fraudulent documents. The judge's expression turned stone cold. In that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt free. For the first time since meeting Hannah, I wasn't under her spell. I was watching her facade collapse, piece by piece. And I knew exactly how I wanted this to end. The final day in court felt like walking into the last chapter of a nightmare. Hannah sat across from me, her hair perfectly styled, her mother beside her, both dressed like they were attending a funeral. Maybe they were the funeral of their own lives. When the judge entered, the room went quiet. Marcus presented one last piece of evidence, the security footage of Ethan withdrawing cash from an ATM minutes after my bank transfer for the so-called surgery. Hannah's face crumbled. Her mother's hand gripped the table so tight her knuckles turned white. The judge didn't even need deliberation. "This court finds the defendants guilty of fraud and misrepresentation," she said, her voice sharp as glass. Hannah and Linda were ordered to repay every cent I had given them plus damages. Ethan, though absent, was added to the judgment as a co-conspirator. I remember standing there, barely breathing, as the gavel struck. Guilty, it didn't sound like victory. It sounded like closure. Hannah turned to me, tears falling. Now real ones, maybe for the first time. "I loved you," she whispered. I looked at her and said quietly, "You loved control." Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to ask questions, but I just walked past them into the sunlight. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. "It's over," he said. But it wasn't really over. Not yet. There were still traces of her in my apartment, her laughter echoing in the empty rooms, the smell of her perfume fading from the pillow. I spent that night boxing up every memory, every photograph, every illusion, and setting it aside for donation. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel broken. I just felt clean. But one last thing still needed to be said, something only she would understand. Weeks passed. The court ruling made headlines in our small city, and Hannah vanished from social media. Mutual friends told me she'd moved in with her aunt out of state, trying to start over. I didn't care. I just wanted silence. One night, while I was finally unpacking the last box in my new apartment, a notification blinked on my phone, a message request. It was from her. "I don't expect forgiveness," she wrote. "But I need you to know, I was never using you at first. Things got complicated. I panicked. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about every tear she'd faked, every lie she'd spun, every moment I'd chosen her comfort over my peace. For the first time, I felt nothing. "Just calm," I typed back slowly. "You didn't destroy me, Hannah. You taught me what love shouldn't feel like. That's something I'll never forget." Before she could respond, I blocked her. No anger, no dramatic exit, just silence. It felt poetic. A week later, I sold the engagement ring, the same one she refused to return. I donated half the money to a heart disease charity, the irony not lost on me, and used the rest to buy a one-way ticket to somewhere quiet. Somewhere her memory couldn't follow. I left my old apartment behind, the walls still echoing her ghost, and walked into a sunrise that finally felt honest for the first time in a long time. My life wasn't built around fixing someone else's chaos. It was mine again. But the final chapter of her story, the one she thought she'd written without me, was about to take a twist she never saw coming. Months have passed since the lawsuit, but sometimes I still wake up expecting her beside me. Healing isn't linear. It's quiet, messy, and painfully honest. Some mornings I catch myself wondering if any of it was real, the laughter, the shared dreams, the way she'd squeeze my hand when she said, "We're a team." Then I remember that love built on lies always ends in silence. I learned more in that 1 year with Hannah than in all the years before it. I learned that loyalty without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I learned that manipulation wears a kind face. And I learned that when people show you who they are, even once, believe them. I've rebuilt my life slowly. New apartment, new city, new rhythm. I started volunteering at a community center, helping people who've been through financial scams and emotional abuse. It's strange how pain, when processed, turns into empathy. I don't warn them about people like Hannah. I just listened because I know what it's like to not be believed. Every so often, someone from back home messages me with updates. Apparently, Hannah tried to appeal the judgment, but lost. Ethan left her shortly after, and Linda sold her house to pay off the fines. For a while, that news made me feel vindicated. But then, it just felt sad. Not for them, just for how much time and trust they burned for nothing. Now, when I think of love, I don't think of sacrifice or endurance. I think of pestekind, that doesn't require proving your worth or buying. Someone's loyalty, people say revenge is sweet. Maybe they're right. But real revenge isn't a courtroom victory. It's walking away and never letting them own a single part of your soul again. They broke my heart. But I got something they'll never have again, peace. And this time, it's mine to keep.